We're in this series, Grace for Your Race. We're in this series, shout it out, Grace for Your Race. One more time, Grace for Your Race. One more time. So when you go to work, go to school, and somebody asks you, your boss asks you, hey, what'd you do yesterday? I went to church. How was it? It was great. And then your boss asks you that intimidating question, what did they talk about? Well, we're on this series, Grace for Your Race. Somebody say, Grace for Your Race. That's the series, but the title, real simple, I got you. I know proper English. I know all your English majors and all your English instructors. Pastor is supposed to say, I have you. No, I got you. Sometimes God just wants to make something so emphatic through language, he just says, I got you. Look at somebody right close to you and tell them, God says he got you. Now, look at your spouse and tell them, God said he got you. I'm still working on getting you. I'm just joking. Just joking. All right, come on, y'all got to laugh. This is church, all right? So where did this come from? I was in the building, so we have this permanent space that we have that's about 46,000 square feet, sits on 6.1 acres. The Spirit Church, we're moving, right? We're soon, and we will be in our building to go before the end of the year. Somebody say amen to that. Yeah. Now, a building is a tool. It is not to be worshiped. The Spirit is not there. The Spirit is in us. We will now have permanent space where we can serve a greater amount of people and serve the community, and we can have a blessing for our set up and take down team. So can set up and take down team say amen to that, all right? It is going well. All is well. I love it. When I say I got it, so I was walking through the building and a member of the church came through. And they were sharing their expertise. And they don't make waves. I love low maintenance members. Somebody say low maintenance. Just like I love low maintenance employees. Somebody say low maintenance. And nothing better than a low maintenance wife. Thank you so much, Tracy. Now, I'm not knocking you. Some of y'all got grace for high maintenance people, which is fine. Like Pastor T could tell you, she has the grace to be married to me. Can I get a good amen? And I'll deal with grace so you'll know what it means. I don't want us to ever be in church not knowing what these words mean. So grace for your race, meaning this. There's a path and plan for your life that if you get on it, grace means God's favor, God's benefits, his loving kindness, his help. All of it is available to you, called grace, unmerited favor. All of it is available to you when you get on your path and do what he tells you to do. Everybody say grace. Many define it in the Christian circles as God's unmerited favor. I would like to define it as grace is God's supernatural ability to help you live your life. How many of y'all know if I had to lift this television or this monitor, I probably could do it because I lift weights. How many of y'all know it'd be a lot easier if 10 of us lifted together? Now, we got some in marriage, you trying to lift the TV by yourself. And do you know the awesome thing about God? He will allow you until you get what's called tired. He'll allow you to run around to different churches until you get tired. God tells you and identifies the shepherd for you. There's some people go out of convenience out of past hurts. When that shepherd speaks into your being and causes you to want to go greater than where you are, you probably found your shepherd. Now, if you go places because it's the happening thing, what's the happening thing? God will always in your life along your path, grace for your race, I got you. He will always for your life allow you to go through seasons where your motives are tested. Because in the world, they say make it look good. In the kingdom, the heart needs to be good. He says the heart. That's why you want to get born again. This is why you don't want to move and go to another city looking for warmth and a better job without him directing you. This is why you don't want to get out the marriage because you're unfulfilled, because you'll go into another one unfulfilled. A spouse doesn't fulfill you. Jesus does. If you keep trying to get out of your spouse what only the Lord can give you, you put undue pressure on your spouse. And you're going to have turbulence. And I'm telling you, while you have turbulence, if you don't get an understanding, you better buckle up. And some of us have gotten accustomed to turbulence. If you're on an airplane, most time, they're not trying to go through turbulence. Nor do they want the passenger's experience to be all 2 hours. We went to LA last week. Can you imagine 4 hours of turbulence? That airline would lose business. So guess what? In this church, what God wants to do is give you wisdom and understanding. Why? To remove unnecessary turbulence. So now as you're going down this path, God will allow your motives to be checked. So for example, we're in a mobile church. Remember, the only difference between people, that's a good tweet. Please tweet this. The only difference between people is what they believe. The only difference between people is what they believe. Listen, middle school and high schoolers, the only difference between you and the student that's next to you is what you believe. Listen, senior citizen, the only difference between you and some senior person that's healthy is what you believe. Some, as they get older, they may have forgotten something. Next thing you know, well, you know it's old age. The devil is a liar. The only difference between people is what they, come on, the only difference between people is, well, you know you can't really pay off a house. The devil is a liar. Matter of fact, if you pay your note every 2 weeks instead of once a month, I think you eliminate at least one payment annually. The only difference between people is what they believe. There are some people come here and every now and then we'll have some low attendance. And they say, man, why the church not growing? Why? They're walking by sight. Why are they walking by sight? Because a number of people, and God will use it, they just looking for the next new hit thing. So a whole bunch of people start flocking, and they will. But he's raising up leaders who are grounded, who do what you do if 2 people show up. See, I didn't build this church, Tracy and I didn't build this church off ambition. Otherwise, we just do a whole bunch of advertisement, marketing, and we will. But that's not what this is about. This is about me going through what's called transformation, where I would be ready to handle the thousands. When I say we're going to have 100,000, I speak what God says. I speak what God says. Not because I'm trying to. I've spoken to 60,000 people. I've prophesied to 60,000 people in Cardinal Stadium. And the prophecy has come to pass. They put on their website. My pastor, who was in Phoenix, he texted me afterwards. He said, man of God, I believe you're called to preach to hundreds of thousands. This was 8-9 years ago. Why am I saying this? Be careful with people who judge things based on what they see. There are words being spoken to each of us that you have no clue. I am not in a rush to build nothing I'm not ready for. The dangerous thing about the NFL and some of our professional sports leagues, the players are a lot younger. So all of a sudden they get a $21 million contract and they're 20 years old. That's like going to New York and building a skyscraper without a foundation. God is concerned about you being prepared for what he has for you. You see, they told me, Dr. Walter, and I may have mentioned this last time I was here, I was on an airplane with Dr. Walter, who's a specialist who goes around the world working with babies with respiratory distress syndrome. One of his colleagues is actually one of the doctors that discovered the cause of it and how to cure it. He was coming back from, he was in Alton, I think, for like 4 weeks. And then we were on a plane together heading out a couple of weeks ago. And I always ask people in their different professions, what's something that's unique about your profession that you know people would be probably intrigued to learn? And he said, an interesting thing you ask this, and I do this all the time, because I want to know about other people. I'm a people's person. That didn't sound right. I'm a people person. I'm intrigued by humanity. I love humanity. For the life of me, and I'm getting ready to make a statement to you, but I understand what I'm getting ready to say. This is really a statement I'm just making for effect. It's hard for me to understand why people don't get along, even though I know why people don't get along. It's hard for me to understand why people don't get along based on skin color, but I understand why people don't get along based on skin color. It's hard for me to see that a husband and a wife that's been married for years get a divorce and can't stand each other, but I do understand why that happens. My point is, God wants to train you and I to do things for the right reasons. And what Dr. Walter said, he said, here's a unique thing that I found out about delivering the mother. He said, if we want the baby, because Pastor Tracy and I were wondering how many of our children you were induced. So 2 of them were where they had to induce you to get the baby coming. Am I right? That's what Dr. Walter said. He said we can induce and we can speed it up. But here's what I found out what he said. And please hear this for you prophetically. He said, the interesting thing is we don't know what causes a woman, when it's her time to have a baby, we don't know what causes her to have a baby. And here's the thing I love about it. He said, but once it's time for that mother to have a baby, we can't stop it. Oh, you better receive this prophetically. You see, when it was time for Joseph, Old Testament, to finally go and solve Pharaoh's problem, it all began to make sense, the envy of his brothers, being sold out into slavery, being falsely accused, being forgotten while in prison. It all made sense because it was now Joseph's delivery time. It was time for Joseph to be delivered to his place of destiny, to the dream that he had when he was a teenager. Now, all of a sudden, envy, some of you all experiencing not managing it well. Envy comes out of a person, because we all have it in the old nature. Envy comes out of a person when they don't understand God's place for them. Envy. You got a great marriage, some people are going to be envious of it, because they thinking they don't have a spouse, or maybe they had a tough spouse, so they start being envious of your relationship. You can't get mad, call them haters. For their experience, they just don't believe that it's possible, and they kind of, something inside of their own nature, even if they're born again, is staring in them, and they don't even know to cause them to realize, if I could just get a word to them, you can have a great marriage too. And a great marriage does not mean you don't sweat any more than working out. When you start sweating, you start panicking. Sweat and working out in marriage go together. So if you got married so everything could be a bliss and you can live on one happy day, leave it to Cleaver, somebody shout out, the devil is a liar. That means you went into the marriage with unrealistic expectations. So the truth is, we have over 1,300 members to this church. Those are the actual numbers that the office sees, people giving offerings. So I know, and my dad makes this statement, he said, it's not what people don't know that hurt them. It's what you do know that's not true. Grace for your race. There are some parents right now, oh, my children, I'm not letting them play football. I see the concussions. If they're not supposed to play, don't let them play. I'm seeing too many parents deciding futures as relates to the purpose of their child. What if nobody wanted to clean toilets? What if every parent was like you? My child not going to clean toilets. What if nobody wanted to deal with sanitation? And every parent said, my child is not going to do, bless God, no sanitation. Let me tell you something. Everybody got grace for what you call to do. Sometimes when I go stand on that football field and I see the football players, I'm like, wow, I did that. Because, this is a sport. It's collisions. And I know some of y'all are like, ooh, I don't like that. I think they should get rid of it. No. I started to say something else. No, we're not going to get rid of them. What if Jesus said, you know what? You know what, Pilate? I don't want any of your soldiers to participate in any person being killed on a cross activity. Jesus never dies on the cross. Everybody has a purpose. And when purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. The people that seem to talk the most are the people that seem to lack purpose. Here's what I found. When you get into your purpose, you come alive. You don't need drugs when you're fulfilled. Some things are symptoms to fulfillment, what I call fulfillment decoys. In other words, we go after materialism, we go after degrees. In other words, you getting a doctorate or a master's don't mean you mastered anything. Because if you don't understand your master and your doctorate is all to serve other people, you've missed the whole purpose for your education. If your goal is so people can acknowledge you and call you doctor or call you master, you've missed it. I've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I've heard people call me, and I've heard people say, ooh, you've gotten too pride, and the focus has been on the Hall of Fame. I've heard people say that. Have no clue of my purpose. Zilch nada. But I have to be patient with them. And I have to operate with grace with them. Because I know they don't know any better. They're trying to figure out my life. When their life. No. When their life requires their whole focus. Because to live a purposeful life takes focus. Only thing I'm saying to you is this. The only thing changed when it comes down to being inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame, y'all know what I realized what changed the most? It's people's perspective of me. I didn't change. Matter of fact, there's a guy named Gil Brandt. Why do I say Gil Brandt? Why do I call the name? Because this is not a parable. This is a true story. If you want to know the difference between true stories when Jesus taught in the Bible and a parable, in true stories, he would use names. Parables, illustrations, spiritual, earthly illustration to spiritual truth, that's the difference. I'm telling you an actual story. You can call Gil Brandt, who's in his 80s, been around pro football for a long period of time. As soon as I got inducted, and he did one of the first interviews in Canton, Gil gave me about 4 sheets of paper. He says, you need to see this. I said, what is this? He says, when we have the committee and we get to talking about who's going to be inducted, he says, you're one of the few players that played with a predominant losing team. Most of the guys who get into the Hall of Fame are on winning teams because they get more exposure. Now, even though I played my last 4 years with the Rams and got some visibility, he said, I need to show you something on paper. What did my dad say? It's not what people don't know that hurt them, it's what they do know that's not true. He says, I had to give factual evidence because some of the reporters, they didn't really know about you. You were in Arizona. You were like Snoopy in the desert. He said, but when you're dealing with people on committees, you got to give them facts. He said, look at that. I said, what is this, Gil? He said, I went back and researched the top receivers that you played against and other cornerbacks who are in the Hall of Fame already, and how each of you guys did against the Hall of Fame and top receivers during your day. Y'all know what Gil said? He said, you were the top. He said, you were the top. I never knew that. I wasn't looking for that. Every day I was focused on reaching my potential and being the best I could be. Why? You're talking about a person who wouldn't have played football. I'm still talking about purpose, family. I am tired of seeing our kids in school with no purpose. Yes, go to school, the ones who are supposed to. But what about the ones who like to work with their hands and should go to do a trade? Come on, wake up. I say, wake up. Do you know these electricians working on our building, some of them make over $100,000 a year? Wake up. Get out of, why do I say get out this stupor? Because everybody begins to think the same. Everybody's not for school as far as secondary education. You get a trade, you still got to go to school, maybe 2 years to rank in a place like that. My whole point is find your purpose. And grace for your purpose. Because I got in my purpose. Because I took a step. I was following Achilles, my middle brother, CPA. I was following him. I love following him. It was cool. He used to fight me to keep me from following him. Literally. He used to fight me. That's how much I love my brothers. They were my role models. But when he graduated, he called me back and said, little brother, slow down. You'll be working the rest of your life. Around that time, I got saved. That's when I understood what Christianity was all about. It was never about religion. And people send you to church when you're young and this stuff don't make sense. Here it is. You got a Father who created all. And you got his Son who died for all. This is true whether you believe it or not. That's what I found out. Truth is like a pack of lions. It needs no defense. What am I saying to you? Find your purpose, man. Can you imagine two people outside their purpose trying to be married happily? Then therefore, they're going to try to get out of each other that which they each can't give each other. We're talking about this race. And my title is I Got You, because when I was walking through the building, I was listening to this member of our church, and these people, these members who are working along with the building project, they are perfectly equipped for this. This is how they're wired. And I was walking with one as they were talking, and the Spirit of God said to me, I got you. That's what he told me. While I was walking with this member I'm listening to, and I'm so thankful because I know how I'm wired. I don't like none of the details to none of this stuff. I don't. And guess what? There's certain things I don't do. Like my dad is a do-it-yourselfer. Love Dad. He can do a lot of stuff. There's some stuff I can learn to do, I won't. Because I know how much my time is worth. If I can pay somebody $30 an hour, whatever it is, to mow my grass, and in that half an hour I can make $5,000, how many of y'all know it's not wise for me to be cutting grass? Somebody just shout out, wisdom. Come on, somebody, one more time, wisdom. If I want to lose weight, I'm telling you, some people make this stuff so deep and they come up with all this stuff to get your money. If you want to lose weight, you got to consume less calories than you burn. I mean, I'm not asking you for a love offering for that at all. Somebody shout out purpose. The original intent for a thing. Purpose, the original intent for a thing. Purpose, the original intent for a thing. Purpose, the original intent for a thing. Some of us, with your relationship, you need to start asking yourself, what's the purpose for this conversation? I had some people in my life in the past, Like, we're like oil in the water. How many of y'all know oil in the water will never mix? So I'm not going to try to change that person. I'm just going to get out the mixture. Somebody say amen to this. So Paul talked about winning this race, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And over in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the Apostle Paul, if you put that up there, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, should be around verse 9. I'm sorry, start at verse 1. Start at verse 1 for me. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, there it is. True, there's nothing to be gained by it, but as I am obligated to boast, I will go on in visions and revelations of the Lord. This sounds kind of ambiguous. I want to set this up and I want to read the scripture. God, the Apostle Paul, God has shown him tremendous revelations. In other words, Paul has such a relationship with the Lord will reveal things that Paul couldn't even speak about. And what Paul was saying, if you go back, and I want to encourage you to go back and read 2 Corinthians 12 and read the whole chapter. In verse 1, Paul is saying, I could be boasting about all these revelations. Because what was happening, people who were not even apostles at his level were boasting. And the people were being carried away because of their boasting. And Paul is saying, I could be boasting because I've seen some stuff. The Lord has shown me some stuff, but Paul said, I don't get down like that. In other words, God said, I don't win you by telling you about all this super great stuff God showed me. At the end of the day, people don't care what Paul saw. They want to know, how does it impact my life? Am I right? So Paul has said, true, there's nothing to be gained by it. He's talking about boasting. But as I am obliged to boast, I will do on to visions and revelations of the Lord. Then he goes on to humor them. He begins to tell them about the revelation. And then he begins to say, I'm not sure if I was sleeping when this happened or I was physically taken out of my body when God revealed this to me. He says in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 6, he's telling about the revelations, and he says, I'm really not sure how it actually happened. I'm just telling you how it happened. Now go to verse 7. Now, Paul got these great revelations, and Pastor T did a wonderful job, and I'm getting ready to tie last week's message to the final closing right now. We're talking about grace for the race. Pastor T did a wonderful job of talking about the pride, one of the things that hinder people in their races, right? And then she gave the example of how something I shared with Pastor T about the dog. But do you know there are some things I didn't listen to her as well? So I could stand up and I could tell you some things that I should have listened to my wife. And I had some pride, and it didn't turn out so well. So I love the illustrations, and we respect each other like that. And so Paul was shown these revelations. But because these revelations evidently were so significant for a human to see, there's a tendency to have pride. See, Lucifer, who's now Satan, alias the devil, he used to be over worship in heaven. This dude let a third of the angels rebelled against God. Why? Can you imagine if his music was before God and his worship, what this being must have been created like? You haven't heard music until you hear music. So evidently he got prideful. And then now Paul, God is showing me what God allowed to happen in Paul's life to keep him humble because of, he could be boastful because of what he's seen and him being an apostle. See, the one thing I learned about being a pastor, some people get in this game to get people to serve them. Really, pastoring is an upside down pyramid. I serve you. You are not created to serve me. And I understand it. So that keeps me humble. The other thing that keeps me humble is what Paul has. I know the reality of my life, not what people say. I know who I really am. I know what I would really do. without God's grace, and I know what I have done while being born again. That keeps me humble. I read on Twitter, Tennessee Vols played against Florida in college. 9 seconds left. Florida throws a Hail Mary. Tennessee loses the game. One of my friends on Twitter calls the Tennessee players dummies. How many of y'all know I'm going to call that friend? I know I'm going to share with them. These kids not dummies. They did a poor job on that play and lost the game. They're not dummies. In other words, I know what keeps me humble. I know I can be dumb and have been dumb at some times. When I have to remind myself with my children raising them, I had some dumb days as a child. Look at somebody next to them and say, you've had dumb days too. Come on, right there. No. You said it passively. Tell them right now with your indignant face, you've had some dumb days too. Some of y'all right now look back at some of your prior relationships and you see some of those old pictures with that old friend. You're like, what was I thinking? Now look at your neighbor and say, humble yourself. That's what caused me to respect other people. And let me parenthetically insert something that's totally different from what I'm getting ready to say. I don't want to see another bad confrontation with law enforcement. If you're a citizen, let's go through this. You get pulled over. Do what this person asked you to do. Please don't. I hear some of y'all right now. You don't know. Are you ready? You got your sign and everything. I'm not talking about that. Yes, law enforcement need to be held accountable, and there's one, even if they're wrong and they get off, there's one that gives justice. So nobody's getting away with anything. But we still losing lives. And notice I say lives. Yeah, all lives. I don't care what color you paint it. When a life is lost, a generation has been tossed. Because you don't know who's being killed, and don't tell me, oh, this person was a drug addict. That's a life. It's a life. All I'm telling you right now, this came in my time as I was preparing this morning, praying in the Spirit. He said, take my people. He said, take them to Romans chapter 13. Go right now in Romans chapter 13, verse 1. I had to get this in. Get me Romans chapter 13, verse 1, please. Get there quickly, please. I know you're there. You're going to get there. There it is. Let every person, shout it out. Say it again. Now, did he say if authority is doing it, saying it to you right? I want to tell you, tell me if you see that in here. Because if you do, I'll go along with you. He's given us instructions to be victorious in every situation. He's showing you when the other person having a bad day, how you can still have a good day. God is always proactive. He's not reactive. He wants to teach his children how to be successful in crazy times that we're living in. Let every person be loyal, subject to the governing civil authorities. Let every one of you, every one of us, if they treat you right. Is that what that say? I'm raising up thermostats, not thermometers. I'm raising up thermostats, not thermometers. For there is no authority except from God, by his permission, his sanction. And those that exist do so by God's appointment. The Bible helps us be victorious in these times that we're living in. When they pull you over, do what they ask you to do. Teach your children, just do what they ask you to do. I had my Mercedes two-seater driving. I switched lanes, I got pulled over. Who gets pulled over for a lane violation? I got pulled over. I didn't argue with that guy. And by the way, this was an African American that gave me a ticket. It didn't matter. I thought to myself, come on, don't y'all have better things to do? That was a thought. But my spirit said, yes, sir. I got the ticket, and we moved on. Now, here's what I heard some say. You can do that because you got money. No, actually the opposite. I can do something crazy and go fight it in court and spend all my money trying to fight in court. Or I can make this guy upset for a lane violation. And next thing you know, I'm handcuffed. And then y'all see Pastor handcuffed. And every time I get up here, y'all gonna refer to the Spirit Church as the pastor handcuffed. All because I didn't get myself together and make a wise decision. Why am I saying this? Not that people are not wrong in law enforcement. And we have a governance, we have a judicial system that we pray works right. But make no mistake about this, there's a judge above the judge. There is a judge above the judge. I had to get that in. I had to get that in. You can do your protesting, but let's keep all of us alive. Come on, let's thank God for today.